Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, middle of the night, early morning, whenever you're listening to this. Welcome to the Western Rookie Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Johnson, and it's just me today. And here's what I wanted to talk about today. I want to talk about my Western hunting plans for the next, I'm going to say 5 to 7 years and what that looks like. Now, there's been a lot of changes based off of resident and non-resident tag allocations. There's been how many years you can go into the preference point draw. For example, like the state of Wyoming is proposing that you got to be active in the preference point draw, and this is somehow going to help prevent point creep for the future. And so there's a couple things that I want to talk about that what the next, I don't know, what the next 5 to 7 years looks like for me, knowing that I'm sitting on several preference points for the state of Wyoming. My love for prairie mule deer, such as North South Dakota, Western Nebraska, what that looks like. And if I want to maybe go back to Colorado or start collecting points for Colorado in some of these units, maybe play the Idaho game or a lottery state like New Mexico and what that kind of looks like for me, along with maybe some other, like sprinkling in some other non-resident hunts in whitetail states like Wisconsin. Missouri is getting ready to change its non-resident tag allocations as well. So there's a lot to kind of consider now. And with all of these changes, you're definitely going to need to be on top of what it is you're trying to accomplish, right? With some of these states where there used to be guaranteed draws, or there used to be like a preference point system where you could just keep gaining and gaining. It sounds like some of those are changing, so we need to be up to date on whatever our goals are, and maybe even readjust what our goals are leading into that. So I want to kind of talk about that today. And the thing that has really got me thinking about this right now is, and I'm not sure if you guys know this or not, but I recently underwent a knee replacement surgery. And after talking to my physical therapist, he said that the average knee replacement surgery is given to someone who's 68 years old. I am 45. That's how bad my knee was. And so it warranted a knee replacement. So I'm 5 weeks out and I'm getting better every week, but I just didn't feel like I was going to be ready for a Western hunt, which was more than likely going to be like a prairie mule deer hunt, kind of humping through the hills of, Western South Dakota or Western Nebraska or Eastern Wyoming. But so I took this week off, or this year off. I'm going to take this year off and I'm going to focus on whitetails here in Iowa. And if I'm feeling good towards the towards that late October, early November timeframe, and I tag out in Iowa, and my knee is doing okay, well, I'll tell you this, I might hop across the border to potentially Missouri or southeast Minnesota or southwest Wisconsin and hop on some public land there if I'm feeling up to it. But other than that, I'm thinking like this is going to be a stagnant year. I'm just going to start preparing and putting a plan together for all of the upcoming years. So rehab's going very well. I have full range of motion already that they say like you want a full extension at 0. I already have that. And you want a bend at 125. I'm already past that. And so I'm really looking forward to continuing this path of rehabilitation that I'm on. And I even told my physical therapist, I'm like, hey, listen, my goal is to be in a tree stand by October. Is that going to happen? He's like, yes, that can happen. And so now it's just a matter of maintaining my physical therapy schedule. And then once I'm done with my physical therapy schedule, just start a strength, ease into a strength training program, do my air squats, do my leg press, do my walks, and then slowly start adding some weight to my back where I'm going to feel comfortable carrying some weight to and from the tree stand in hopes that I'm somewhat back to normal by, October 1. Anyway, that's the goal. So, all right. Let me take a sip of coffee here. By the way, nothing's better than I don't know. I like black coffee. There's nothing better than the first sip. I mean, there are some things, I'm a grown man, there are some things that are better than the first sip of black coffee of the day. But something about the first sip of black coffee every morning is just kind of sets you on that right, sets the tone for the day. So that wasn't my first sip. That was probably my 52nd sip of coffee today. All right. Before we get into the rest of the episode, though, I do have to send a huge shout out to the partners of the Western Rookie Podcast. First and foremost, Montana Decoy. There are a lot of scenarios out west, whether you're elk, mule deer, antelope, whitetail, spot and stalk, maybe sitting in a meadow somewhere where a decoy would be a really good option to get within shooting range or kill range of get in the bubble, they say, of an animal you're trying to kill, especially with archery equipment. So go check out montanadecoy.com. They have elk, they have mule deer, they have antelope, they have cattle that you can kind of sneak up to antelope on. Very packable, very lightweight. It is turkey season, so they have a really good selection of turkey hunting decoys as well. So go check out montanadecoy.com. Next on the list is, and I've been using this broadhead for several years. Okay. I've killed a ton of whitetail with it. I've killed mule deer with it. I personally am for an animal like mule deer or whitetail or even antelope. I would suggest a mechanical or a mechanical head. I'm a huge fan of the 3-blade jackhammer, and dude, that thing just destroys whatever it hits. If you're looking for a bigger animal and you want a fixed blade option, they have those as well. I'm a huge fan of the Boss 4-blade. That one flies very well. And so if you're looking for a mechanical or a fixed blade option, most of their heads are still manufactured in the United States. So that's a big win. Go check out wasparchery.com. I do have a discount code, and it is NFC20, NFC20 for 20% off. All right, here we go. Next 5 years. All right. So I got to start using my preference points in Wyoming. And I think how I want to do this is the goal is archery, right? I really want to shoot my Wyoming mule deer with a bow. I really want to shoot my Wyoming elk with a bow. I'm not so, set on shooting my antelope with a bow, just on how hard it is and the range that you need with archery tackle to get an antelope to, 80 yards, right? I got to be willing to take a 60 to 80 yard shot because in the terrain where these animals live, that's probably a higher likelihood than your 40-yard shot, right? Unless I can do some blind water hole or set in a fence gap or something like that, figure something like that out. So I'm thinking what I want to do is this year I'm taking a Western hunt off. Next year, I will still collect preference points for elk and mule deer, and I will set up a rifle hunt for antelope in Wyoming, right? I have enough to where I feel like maybe not any, but I will say 90% of all units will allow me to rifle hunt with the amount of points I have. I believe this July, I will be purchasing my 12th antelope preference point. And so with 12 preference points, I should be able to rifle hunt just about anywhere in the state of Wyoming. So I'm thinking I'm going to go and do that next fall, the fall of 2027. And that this year will give me a chance to plan and prep and find the public, find where I'm going to camp, find the make sure everything's right. I know that with a rifle, I'll be able to extend my range, 300, 400 yards, maybe even further, depending on what rifle I decide to use. My father, my stepdad, he has a 30-06 with a good scope on it, and he shot a an antelope with that at 420 yards in Wyoming a handful of years ago, and so I feel like that's going to be the option for me, right? And the only thing I got to figure out is what unit I want to go to, and where I'm going to camp. Am I going to camp in my truck? Am I going to try to find a campground? Things like that. And so really just plan there. The next year, and I think I might start doing this, where if I buy the license, get next year's antelope out of the way, then I'll come back to a state like Nebraska or South Dakota, where the draw odds are fairly easy. And this year, I will be collecting a preference point for South Dakota, which means that the following year should be a no-brainer for me. It should be an easy draw with 2 preference points for South Dakota if I do it that way. Then in 2028, I'll draw that South Dakota tag and then, go hunt South Dakota archery. In 2020, that would be 2027 for Wyoming, 2028 for South Dakota. 2029 is I'll be 40, I'll be 48, 49 years old, depending on when I go. And really what I want is this is the ultimate goal, is to kill a bull elk. I don't even really care the size, dude. I'll be completely honest. Like, you tell me 300, I don't even care. I want to kill a bull elk with a bow. Inches don't matter to me, really. And I think if inches don't matter, then where I hunt doesn't necessarily matter either. I want to have kind of an experience of a September mule deer, or excuse me, elk rut. And so when I'm starting to plan for that hunt, I don't want to be in grizzly bear country. That's just something that I think I've figured out that I don't want to do unless I'm with an outfitter or a guide. And from just looking at what it would cost to have a guide or go through an outfitter, financially, I don't know if that's going to be an option for me. It's just an additional cost that I don't know if I want to spend. So I'm going to go the public land route. I have all the tents, the trekking poles, the jet boils, everything I need to do maybe like a little spike camp in, hike back a couple miles and try to do that. And ultimately, that's the goal. So everything that I do, I want it to circle around the success of the archery elk hunt, right? And so the reason I'm putting that out there further is because I want to make sure that this knee is 100% recovered, because sometimes they say it takes an entire year. So I'm not even, and so that's why I'm passing on this year. And so I want to be 100% sure that I'm in good shape, that my knee is stable, that my other knee is stable. I'm taking the right, dietary precautions, the right workout program, living a healthy lifestyle, because I know that when I draw that archery tag, that's going to be a huge commitment for me. I'm going to dedicate more than my normal 8-day plan, right? Usually when I go on a Western hunt, it's a day of driving, it's 6 days of hunting, and then it's another day of driving back. And so the further west you go means the further you're going to be driving, means potential hotel rooms and things like that. And I'm trying to balance all of that out. And so I know that when I draw that elk tag, or potentially draw that elk tag, I'm really looking forward to trying to figure out like the logistics there. And that would be, I would have to have a conversation with my wife, but I would like to give myself like a 12 to 14-day window to hunt, knowing that weather could play an impact, knowing that I would have to bounce around to different trailheads or hiking opportunities just to get away from other people, to have backup plans, um, and use all of my resources through the contacts that I've made throughout the years, whether that's a Western environment or guys from the East Coast who have hunted with the West, and really just try to curate a plan that's right for me. And I feel like like for that particular elk hunt, I want it to be an epic, memorable moment. And so I want to dedicate more time on that hunt. I've already talked with my dad. He owns a camper, and he said that he would be willing to pull the camper out there. Now, when you're pulling a camper out west, you can't drive 90 miles an hour in the middle of the night like you can in just a regular truck. So he's like, well, it'll probably take me 2 days to get out there. So because he's not, my dad is not a speeder. Like, he does not drive fast. He drives the speed limit. And especially when he's pulling a camper and with the wind that's out in the west, you got to plan for all of that. So I feel like that's going to be the hunt that's going to take the most planning, preparation, and logistics to get that one accomplished. Now, after that, the only, I would have burned my antelope points. I would have burned my elk points. And I think then after that, the following year, I've been out there 2 times now, and I'll be scouting terrain. I'm sure that when I'm in the antelope country, I'll also be looking. I'll be seeing mule deer around, so I'll be able to mark that on Onyx or wherever I'm at and get an idea where there's some potential mule deer spots as well. So I'm going to be using the 2 previous trips to Wyoming in order to get some intel on the mule deer as well. And then I think an archery mule deer hunt somewhere. And I'll be completely honest, I'm not opposed to chasing river bottom whitetails or any type of whitetail out there as well, if I can. Obviously, mule deer would be the ultimate goal, but if I run into a whitetail, I'm not opposed to, going and chasing a whitetail if that's something that's an option. I know in South Dakota, you can use your tag for a whitetail. It's a deer tag, so you can use it for whitetail or mule deer. And I think you can do the same thing in Wyoming as well. That's something I'm going to have to double check on to see if that has changed or not. But either or, I would prefer some kind of, not necessarily high country, like really big, giant mountainous terrain, but something a little bit more terrainy, some breaks, some crags, just some badland type of environment that I kind of hunt in South Dakota would be really nice to hunt. That way I have experience doing that. And so that would be, all of those hunts would be in this next 7-year time frame. And I'll be completely honest, if I start getting old and feeling it, I'm not necessarily opposed to bringing a rifle on that mule deer hunt. Like I said, the ultimate goal is the archery elk. Sprinkled in there, depending on draw results, depending on preference points, I'm going to probably start collecting preference points in Colorado in some of the past units that I've hunted in the past. And the only reason I want to do that is because I have a friend out there who I would love to draw and hunt with again. And so he's in the western part of Colorado, and obviously he's a resident, so he gets to hunt every year. But I want to sprinkle in that. I want to sprinkle in other states like Idaho as well. I want to sprinkle in potentially New Mexico. And a lot of these states, like New Mexico is a lottery. And I think what I want to do there is I want to just apply for a unit on some of the years that I may draw a South Dakota mule deer tag where I'm not drawing Wyoming. I might want to just roll the dice and apply for a elk tag in New Mexico in a lottery unit where the success rate is like 4% or less or 5% or less. And I know they have those. And just know, like, just assume I'm not going to get it. Just assume it. But if I do get it, then I can change my plans and the cost of whatever tag I was going to eat. I know a lot of states have an option to give the tag back or sell the tag back to the state. You get your money back. You give this state the tag back, and things like that if it doesn't work out. So I might be doing that on the years that I don't want to hunt Wyoming in the future. I've kind of put all my preference points into the state of Wyoming at this point, just because that collection method was easiest at the time, right? And so because it was easy means I put a lot of time into that state. And now with these potential changes, I want to pull the trigger on that state before I before I get caught with my pants down and all of those preference points don't mean anything anymore, or they make a really big change to for non-residents where I'm gonna be like I'll be screwed and all that time won't matter anymore. So I'm gonna start really paying attention to that and any rule and regulation change. Arizona is also something that I have been really thinking about, not for elk, but for um, I guess you would call it late season mule deer. They have down in like a January timeframe, they have a late season mule deer hunt where it's an archery hunt, and I know a lot of guys have who have gone down there before, and they say it's extremely fun. Now, the only thing that I don't know about is some of those units are right on the border of Mexico, and I don't know if it's as much of an issue now than it was for the previous administration, but there is a lot of people coming across the border. I know he runs into them. There's a lot of garbage. There's a lot of like things down there that could impact you. And so that might be a sidearm. You know what I mean? A sidearm type of hunt where I'm packing and maybe not necessarily sleeping in a tent in the middle of nowhere, but maybe, going to an official campground or something like that, or maybe going with someone who has done it before. And I know a couple guys who have done it before, and maybe hunting with them would be fun. The other thing that I have thought about is when and if I draw that Wyoming elk hunt, I will be sitting on 13 to 14 preference points. Okay. And so that could potentially get me to some of the best elk hunting units that there possibly are. All right. So there's that. Right. And I go out there. I don't have a ton of elk hunting experience, but if you're going to one of the best, maybe, I get lucky or something like that. But here's what I'm thinking. The other thing that I'm thinking is finding somebody who has hunted those units, who may not have a lot of preference points stacked up. Maybe they have 2 or 3 or whatever. And then applying as a group and using my heavily weighted preference points to average it out to go to a unit where that person is more knowledgeable about, and that they don't necessarily get to hunt every year, but because they're piggybacking off my preference points, then they'll be like, yeah, sure, dude, I'll go hunt with you. I just, um, I need them to kind of guide me, and I would be willing to use my preference points as leverage for that to happen, so that I have, I'm going to be going with someone who has way more knowledge of that, of that unit, that basin, that drainage than me by myself. So I would be willing, I feel like I'd be willing to give up a premier unit in order to hunt with someone in a lesser unit who has more knowledge about that said unit, if that makes sense. So, and I would be probably willing to do that on the mule deer side of things too. I don't necessarily know if, because my standards aren't so high with antelope. I don't feel like I would necessarily be willing to do that with antelope. I feel like that antelope rifle hunt is going to be something that I can do by myself. I just need to practice long range shooting and do that. But outside of that, I feel like that is my goal. Sprinkle in some lottery hunts, sprinkle in some Colorado, Idaho hunts, sprinkle in some of the traditional mule deer hunts that I've been doing in the Dakotas and Nebraska. Maybe sprinkle in because I'm going to be sitting on some Kansas points as well for whitetail, and that's where my uncle lives. So I got a place to hunt out there, and then start working in the Wyoming hunts as well. And so that, my friends, is my 5 to 7 year plan. That might even get stretched out to 10. And I'm really hoping that all of this works out in my favor. I hope I stay healthy. I'm 45 years old right now, so I'm starting to think about all of the hunts that I want to do, all of the goals that I want to accomplish. I've killed a mule deer, so I can check that box. I want to kill an antelope. I want to kill a elk, and I'm hoping to do that in the next 5 to 7 years. So the cool thing about this and the way social media works is I would love to hear your guys' 5 to 7 year plans as far as your non-resident hunts are concerned. Now, that just doesn't mean like if you live in New York and you're trying to travel to, Colorado or Montana. I'm talking about the guys out west too. If you live in Colorado and you're trying to hunt Montana, Idaho, or Wyoming, what that looks like for you, or go down to New Mexico or Nevada or whatever the case is, Utah. I'd love to hear what your guys' 5 to 10 year plans are as well. And so you can do that through, reach out to me via the Western Rookie podcast Instagram page or the Nine Finger Chronicles Instagram page. Leave a comment on the YouTube channel. But you can find the Western Rookie podcast on Spotify, on iTunes, wherever you download this podcast or listen to it. Do me a favor, subscribe to it. Leave a comment. That lets everybody know that this is a badass podcast. Also, the Western Rookie is on YouTube, so go find the Western Rookie YouTube channel as well. Other than that, guys, good vibes in, good vibes out. Hopefully you guys have an awesome spring, and we will talk to you next time.